Hi guys, today we'll look into a scenario in which Asia unites in 2022. This is what Asia looks like. All these islands, the Indonesian archipelago I'm going to call it, the Philippines archipelago, which I'm calling it, the Japanese archipelago, please don't eat that, the Himalayas right here, a mountainous country that I'm not going, Afghanistan, which has 3 trillion estimated dollars in natural resources. This would be the biggest economy in the world, combining India and China. And while there's lots of big economies, Russia would add a lot to the economy, but really, probably not, because all the money in Russia is there. But this is all resources. Just all resources is the North. All resources. Well, let's start. The first thing that Asia does is, expand. And this won't be every island. The Philippines only gets that color. Oh, I'm probably not going to keep coloring in repetitively. Oh, this is pretty good. Good enough, even though I'm missing like 5,000 islands. The first thing they do is expand into the rest of Azerbaijan and Georgia, which Russia does not like. NATO is there praying that they don't move any further, because Russia applies to join NATO, which NATO accepts. That's out of the blues, but after negotiations, Bulgaria and Greece split Turkish Thrace. But it's pretty good for them. Well, they annexed Cyprus quite easily. Maybe Cyprus should join NATO. They push into Kazakhstan. Russia, trying to prevent their expansion, gets involved. They're only in NATO because, there's a monster to their right. Ukraine war has ended. You know why? Because, they don't believe Ukraine is a threat, so they just basically pulled out of Ukraine. Saying, yeah, we're done fighting in Ukraine. And basically said, the bigger threat is to my east, not to my west. My mistake. Well, hopefully that happened. Hopefully. That's why. Nobody won ever I just lost. Nobody got claimed victory. Except, who claims victory? Him. Because Putin says, yeah. Thinks he won because that's not the threat anymore. Well, there's a problem happens, but Asia's so much manpower, it doesn't really matter. A lot of North Africa forms a pact. Somalia, Djibouti, Eritrea, Sudan, Egypt, Libya, Algeria. But does Asia care? No. And they continue marching in. They declare war on Egypt, which does this, but there's only really 3 strong nations in this pact. And the strongest of which, they're invading first. They use a different way of invading a country. They make amphibious landings on the coasts, and they push in from here. Because the coast is where everyone lives, and the Nile. And they push towards Cairo on all fronts. And the Sudanese forces push them back here. And they get kicked out there. Well, with Libyan forces, they get pushed back, but not much changes because Libya's weak. And they push down. They cut Cairo off from the rest of Egypt. And Alexandria they take first. And then they push into Cairo, taking the city. And this is pretty great. So now they push down the Nile, where a lot of Sudan's population lives. Well, on top of this, they basically say to Ethiopia, we'll send you weapons and aid in high numbers of money if you join the war. So guess who joins? Ethiopia is now a Asian ally. I don't know if, can you trust Asia, Ethiopia? Are you sure of it? Well, Somaliland declares independence. On the side of Ethiopia, they join the war. So now we have this country. Somaliland is independent. Yay! We should do this in real life. No, I'm kidding. Or am I kidding? You never know, because you're not me. And they storm into Somalia, which Somalia is weak, and everybody's distracted in the north. So it just gives Ethiopia free range over all the weak nations. Well, with the Nile, the country starts to crumble. With this coast falling, Libya occupies Egypt after Egypt surrendered. Well, they continue pushing in the northern Sudan. While Ethiopia storms Eritrea so fast that falls within hours. Well, they fell in 4 hours. Beat that, Denmark. Denmark surrendering 6 hours. Well, there was a country somewhere surrendering to Britain in less than 30 seconds or something. Or 30 minutes. Not sure. All I know is that, well, they're out of the desert now into Sudan. They already have taken Khartoum. Well, they storm all the way down. Sudan surrenders. Well, the most important part of Libya is up here. Well, so they just take that advantage that Libya's coast is where all of its resources are. I don't know how they were getting away. In real life, if they invaded Egypt, the West would be involved. Unless it was Israel, but you know, it's not. So, they surrender. And Asia does the smart move and only occupies these much more lands. So they can just push up from the south. Egypt, Israel, and Jordan, and Saudi Arabia are defended by the U.S. Morocco is a U.S. ally. Oh, they've been fighting Algeria forever. I have the perfect solution to war. Why don't we all just be friends? Such a great idea. And this world is showing us you need friends. Well, this is where they fall. Now the Treaty of Asia is signed, where they flat up give Ethiopia this land. And now it's their turn to hold on to these territories. Border war. Well, they annex this, all to themselves. Ethiopia. Stop being so greedy. Well, on the plus side, now you can build your dam, so build it. And don't annex Somaliland. I gave you enough land. Actually, I didn't, but you can't annex them because I'm the god in this world and I say what I want. So technically, if you're always winning, I could be on your side, which means God is on your side. Enough messing with this universe. Let's go on to see what they do next. Well, they officially sign a pact with Asia, which is basically Asia taking over the world, proving their dominance, all of that fun stuff. Oh, wait. I forgot one thing when I was making borders. Sinai Peninsula is a part of Asia. Oh, the next thing they do is attack Russia, which NATO decided to invite them in, despite the fact they're a dictator. They dropped all restrictions because, well, they need to fight off this guy. Asia. Kosovo joined. Yeah, how does that happen? This is what NATO in Europe looks like. They even stopped caring about Austria's neutrality. And Austria joined. That's random. Morocco joined. That's pretty random. Well, everybody joined NATO because they were scared of Asia, except good old Switzerland, who's like just chilling, hoping their neutrality doesn't get broken, because Swiss like bragging about their neutrality, I guess. All their people that's basically what NATO did. They just let everybody who wanted to join in because they had a big threat, scary Asia. But Asia was prepared for American involvement. And basically, America's plans was to go up, use Alaska, but China intercepted them. Well, Asia intercepted them, so they land in Alaska. They push over to Anchorage, the most strategic city in this war. I wonder why it's so strategic. Well, you could argue it's the most strategical city, I guess. Whoever owns Alaska in the future will be in a good spot. You know why? Because Alaska is full of oil. Unless we stop using oil, which, will we really ever stop using it? Will we really? Well, this is what happens, and Alaska is falling. Well, they have basically put conscription in force a few years ago. You can imagine how big 4 billion people with conscription can get quickly. There's over 1 billion active duty soldiers now. Loads lined up and crossed the Ural Mountains. But tell me how they cross mountains. Well, there's Siberian special trained units, which are way smaller, but still get the job done. Well, they also have Mongolia, the only nation to successfully beat Russia, so, Well, they say invade from the south, which, what do? They run through the Caucasus Mountains. Well, they did get their army pretty big in comparison. And they also have a younger population, which younger population means a bigger conscriptable population. And the bigger the conscriptable population, the better. Well, their tactics are pretty simple. Take out the buffer state as quick as possible. They also have another tactic. Push up here. Well, this is where the world starts saying no. And by no, I mean, what can they do? For starters, countries in West Africa get involved. Well, everyone who hasn't fallen to the dominance. Well, the world is like, kind of like, was like, no. Well, mostly like, no. Too neutral, I guess. Brazil joins in North America. Well, Australia, and actually Oceania joins, mostly Australia. Australia is mainland Oceania, or is it just an island and Oceania is an undersea continent? Like Zealandia. Well, Zealandia is pretty Zealandia, you know what I mean. The good news is they did get this into their territory pretty well. And then they push up and take Gibraltar, which is bad, because now Europe not only is fighting on 2 fronts, is fighting on 3 fronts. Which, Spain probably doesn't like this. Although then again, the only one who really spends money on their defense in Europe is America, is the one who has to defend all these nations, really. In this timeline, Russia's kind of lost a lot of its oil, lots of its timber, and, didn't do much. But it still kept its defense budget high, but a lot of Europe depends on the U.S. How do you keep a union? How do you keep people united when that's how it works? Well, a push via car. They drive their cars through CAR, Central African Republic, or CAR, to get to Dr. Congo, because they need to get some medicine. Actually, this is pretty good. They have the biggest military in the world. Best tactics, and they modernized in the last 5 years significantly. Kenya gets involved with Ethiopia invading. I mean, they kind of got their dam paid for by Asia, so this is the least they can do to read. Well, this is what Africa looks like. They're stalemated in Alaska. No one's making any gains. This is where they are when they get a stalemate with Africa. No one moves anymore. After they set up a defensive line, a very good defensive line. They can't get to Australia, well, because their navy is all too busy, but they have enough naval vessels to protect their coast from Australia. Far away in Australia. Well, they managed to push and take over the ocean. They're not the Netherlands. They push all the way to there. Well, this is where they prepare an offensive into Ukraine. Ukraine be like, I'm never gonna surrender. Despite the fact they put 100 million troops in, Ukraine has already taken out 5 million. They're barely into the Donbass region. Barely into it. Ukraine, good job. This is all they're able to move. Well, they push into Belarus. Belarus pretty much crumbles in days because it's weak. Then the Baltics, which fall in days too. Oh no. Poor little Balkans. Baltics, not Balkans. Somebody needs to teach that person a geography lesson. The Baltics could have done what Ukraine did. A very weak nation making good progress, you know. Isn't that so chill? Pretty much every nation that's invadable will fall, but you know. It's impossible to invade Finland, so they can't invade it. It's almost impossible to invade Ukraine. That's all you can get in years of fighting. Asia, may I add. They push down the Czechia. Their southern front starts pushing in to Macedonia, which means well, they can't go into Bosnia. They might blow up their full army in there. Well, what do? They invade mineland, and everybody gets mad because 99% of people that invade mineland die to mines. Well, they push into Croatia quickly. The morale is quickly rising, except the morale in troops in the Ukraine front is down, and they just decide, no. They join Ukraine. Well, this is around where both sides meet in Kiev about a possible peace treaty, which goes pretty well. And look at how much land they managed to occupy up here. So they accept it. It's basically, you can have Russia. You can have northeastern Poland. Why would Asia not want this? You know. Asia getting strong. I'm using red the full time, so Asia has been the aggressor the full time. They could call themselves the Eurasian Union. Well, they don't. But you see, Europe, Asia. They make a treaty of the Balkans, which basically states, yeah, the Balkans, no more Balkans. They basically take most of the Balkans' land. Romania gets left with Moldavia and Wallace and basically most of it. Unlike Ukraine, who they couldn't even get a millimeter in, and they lost over 100 million troops. Billions, 1 billion forces army. And you lose 100 million of them in Ukraine. Well, basically a Cold War has set down now. What if Asia United Part 2? Could be an idea. But plus South America united. Because they can. If Oceania united, you know what that means? Well, Spain is mad because, well, they're kind of mad at Ukraine for what does Ukraine make Spain do? In that treaty, freedom. They give this area, which was okay until they realized it was Asia they were talking about getting it. They would be okay if that was Britain, but they are mean. Well, they basically annexed every nation in Africa that they invaded an inch into. I mean, a full inch. They basically annexed these lands. And pretty great. Great job, Algeria. Well, a lot of nations in West Africa did vote to unite. Well, Nigeria annexes Niger. And annexes Benin. And then signs a treaty for, well, good borders. And then, well, they do this. Well, they give this land to Ethiopia because Ethiopia did it. Well, they've renamed themselves to Abyssinia. I wonder why. The Congo. Well, South Sudan is still left there. An American ally. Psych. What? Well, this makes Ethiopia mad. They just annexed it. Well, there's nothing Ethiopia can do to an 850 million manpower army. Well, conscription is still, well, they did go down too. They lost so many forces in Ukraine. 100 million. How do you lose all your forces in one small area? Alaska is partitioned. They say the best way to punish America is, well, to give Canada. As you know, Canada is their best friend, right? They basically just say, yeah, it looks bad as a part of America, so give it to Canada. To which America is like, you can't give my oil away. Canada be like, ooh. Oof. Well, we did nothing, Erica, is what their ambassador says. Asia and Alaska is what they call this. Asian Alaska. Asian Alaska. Asian Alaska. Asian Alaska. Keep that in your mind. And this is what if Asia united in 2022. Vanuatu, I think that is. Oh, maybe look at my map of that region. Where, look. Do you see where Hawaii is? It's missing. It's one thing to forget New Zealand, but Hawaii, how do you forget that? Like, Hawaii. Not like it will magically show up. No. Thanks for viewing. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. And Wild Mapper out.